Hey guys, today's lesson, comparing, ordering, and rounding decimals. So this starts our unit on decimals, and so we're getting away from just whole numbers. We're going to throw these decimals in there too. So now we're talking about things like 3.75, something like that, maybe in something like 4.2, where we have this decimal point in there. A couple of things that we're going to be doing. First of all, comparing. If these were the two numbers that we're talking about, we'd want to know. Let's compare them, and we'd be using the greater than, less than, or equal to symbols, just basically saying which one's bigger, and we'd be able to determine that 4.2 is the bigger one here. Other than that, it also says ordering. So maybe I give you two numbers like this, maybe I give you more, and we order them from least to greatest. So you might have several numbers that you have to figure out the order of smallest to largest. And then finally, rounding decimals, which you guys have been doing for a while. If I take something like 3.75 and I want to round it to the nearest tenth, all right, then that would become 3.8. So those are the three things that we're looking at today. Okay, here's a table of our place values here. So just something I want you to take a look at. Get in your notes here. Remember, so here's our decimal point right in the middle. Okay, going to the left of the decimal place are basically our whole number digits. So you can see that we've got the ones right here, and then we've got the tens, the hundreds, and thousands. All right. So and you can see it's it's said right there we got 1,000, 4 of the hundreds, and then 33 where there's 3 tens and then the 3 ones, which makes 33. All right. To the right here is where we have our decimal places. All right. And really the only thing that I carry that you really know are the three of them. Those are the most common: tenths, hundredths, thousandths. If you remember those three decimal places, you're going to be set. I know they keep going further and further and further, but all I care that you know is tenths, hundredths, thousandths, those three things. Okay, here we go. Example 1, give the name of the underlying place value. So you can see on A, B, and C here, I've written 3 different decimal numbers on here, and I underlined a certain place value. I want you guys to go ahead and try to identify what place value that is. So go ahead, pause the video, come up with your answers. Okay, we're back. Part A here. So you can see that I have this 2 right here that's underlined right here. I want to determine that place value. Well, what I know is one spot to the left of the place of the decimal is our tenths place. So I'm looking at the second place here, which I know should be then the hundredths place. All right, because it goes tenths, then hundredths, then thousandths. That one is in the hundredths place. Okay. Next one here, I have the 7 underlined. So I know that these, all right, from the left of the decimal over are my whole number values. So right to the left of the decimal point is the ones, and then comes the tens, all right, with just a T-E-N-S. All right, remember the decimal places are the ones like hundredths where you have the T-H-S on the end. All the decimal places will have that. For the whole number places, it's just going to be the tens there. Okay. Then finally our last one here, we've got this 1 that's underlined again. I know one spot to the left of the decimal place is the tenths, then comes the hundredths, and then finally the last one is going to be my thousandths place. Okay, so very important that you know those decimal places that I showed on this previous page. Again, these ones right here, these are the ones I want you to know, especially tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, comparing decimals. First thing that we need to learn how to do, basically if I give you two numbers like this, 22.5 and 22.05, I want you to be able to tell, well, which one is the bigger of the numbers, which one is the smaller of the numbers. Best way to do this, and this is what I expect to see on your work, is to take these numbers, and I want you guys to line these two numbers up according to its decimal place. When you do this now, I got to say, kids like to write small and they jam things together and that things don't line up. I want you to be very careful so that we're going to line up the decimal point. That's the biggest thing right here that I can tell you. Make sure the decimal point lines up nice and straight. And then the other numbers can fall in place below it. So this is 22. The points are in the same place and this becomes 0 and then the 5. Okay? Now, the next thing I want to tell you is comparing decimal places. I want to make sure, even though, okay, there's nothing there, I see a lot of people all the time say 22.05 is the bigger one because it has more numbers there, and they couldn't be more wrong. Okay, when you see an open spot, like I said right here with this arrow, we want to fill in a number there. We want to have the same number of decimal places on every number. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and get rid of my arrows here, and I want to just draw in an imaginary 0 there, because we can add as many zeros as we want. I could keep adding zeros all day out here. That makes no difference. It doesn't change the number. So I want to draw in that imaginary 0 so that my number has the exact amount of decimal places. Okay? Now, when you compare numbers, here's the first thing I look at. Whole numbers. The whole numbers are the same. They're both 22, so far it's a tie. Okay, if one of these was 23 and the other one was 22, well, I would know the 23 is bigger. That's not the case here. They're both 22. So now I have to move to the right of the decimal place. So I first start here, and I'm just going to work my way from left to right. So I look at here, and now I'm going to compare the 5 and the 0. Well, because the 5 is the bigger one, 5 is bigger than 0, that makes this guy our winner. Okay? Since the 5 is bigger, I don't even care about these two over here. I care that in that place the 5 is bigger than the 0. So when I rewrite this as 22.5, I'm comparing that to 22.05. Well, we just learned that this top one here is the larger one, so I'm going to say 22.5 is greater than 22.05. But again, the two big keys here: line up the decimal point, fill in the zeros so they have the same amount of decimal places, and then we work from left to right, comparing one place value at a time. Okay, now you're going to put you to the test here. I got 3 of them here for you. I want you to compare these using the less than, greater than, or equal to. So go for it. Pause the video. Okay, you're back. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's start with part A here. Okay, again, on your homework, I expect to see this work, that you're going to take these two numbers, 30.12, and we're going to compare that with 30.4, and be very careful that these things line up. My decimal point should line up right there. And I start. The 3's, it's a tie. The zeros are the same. So far, I don't have anything that's bigger than the other. But as soon as I move to the tenths place here, I have a 4 and a 1. Well, because the 4 is bigger, that says that this is our winner. The 30.4 is the bigger one, which means back in our problem, 30.12 is less than the 30.4. Okay, on to the next one, 7.7, 7.70. I'm going to rewrite this, 7.7. I'm going to be as neat as I can. 7.70. Okay, I'm going to fill in the extra 0 that I need. I should have done that on the last one too. Fill in that extra 0 there so we can compare. And look, the 7's are the same. There's my decimal points that line up. These 7's are equal. The 0's are equal. So, because everything's exactly the same, that tells me these two things are equal to each other. Okay, last one, part C, 5.701 compared to 5.699. Again, I'm going to take these three numbers and write them above and below each other, making sure I line up the decimal point. So here's my first decimal point, and then I write in 5.701. Write big. Make sure your numbers are spaced out so they're not crammed together. That's how people make mistakes. Then the 5.699. There's my 5.699. In this case, they have the same amount of decimal places, so I don't need to fill in any zeros. But let's compare. The 5's are the same. Okay? But then as soon as I get to the tenths, since the 7 is bigger than the 6, that makes that one the larger one. 5.701 is greater than 5.699. Okay, so that's comparing using less than, greater than, equal to. Okay? Next one, example 3. We're going to order 2.11, 2.21, the number 2, that's just the whole number right there, 2.06, and 2.24 from least to greatest. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers that we have to compare. Well, let's start stacking them on top of each other, remembering that decimal places have to line up. So my first number here is 2.11. Again, I want to spread out my numbers so it's easier to line up. My second number, Making sure again the decimal points line up, so that's the first thing I put in. 2.21. Then the whole number is a 2. So I want to look at this. This is a whole number, and any whole number, the decimal point is always to the right of the whole number. So the number 2 is actually, if I fill in zeros, just like 2.0. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in here, 2.0. And then because I want them to have the same amount of decimal places, I'm going to fill in another 0 so it matches up with the other ones. Okay, on to the next number, 2.06. Again, I start with the decimal point, 2.06. Okay, and then finally 2.24 is the last one. I'm going to stack them all on top of each other, and now I can start comparing. Again, here's my decimal points. They should make a straight line when I line up. Okay, starting with the whole numbers. Look at this. All of the 2's are the same, so that doesn't help me at all. Again, if one was a 3 or a 4, that would tell me those are larger, but in this case they're the same. It doesn't help. Now on the other ones, here's what stands out to me. I have a 1, and when I get to this column here, I have a 1, a 2, a 0, 0, and a 2. That tells me right here this. These two things have to be the smallest, because these two zeros right here are smaller than the 1's and the 2's in that thing. So I know these two are the smallest. Now it's just looking at those two to find out which one is the smallest. So on just these two, I move to the right, and I have the 0 and the 6 right here, the 0 and the 6. And since the 6 is bigger than the 0, that means the 2.06 is bigger than 2.00. So again, that means this one is the smallest. Again, that was 2.0. I always want to go back to its original form, which that was the whole number 2. So 2 is the smallest. Okay, so that one's out of there. Gone. I can even just eliminate it. Then came the 2.06. Okay, that one's out of there. Now it's down to the other 3. Again, if I go back here to this, I'm still on this column, the tens place. Okay, because now I have a 1, a 2, and a 2. Well, because this 1 here is smaller than the 2's, that makes the 2.11 next. 2.11. That one's out of there. Then I'm down to my last 2. Okay, the 2.21 and the 2.24. Since this right here, I know it's getting a little sloppy, but since this 2 again was the same as this 2 is the same as this, then I move to the last place where I have a 1 and a 4. The 1 is smaller than the 4, so that means this one right here is the next smallest. So the 2.21 comes next, and then finally the last one, so that one's out of there. That leaves me a last one, which is the 2.24, and there is your final answer. I know that's a lot of work, but that's how you do it. You start on the left, work your way to the right. Okay, finally, so we did comparing, we did ordering, lastly is rounding. This is something that all 7th graders should be able to do now. However, it still gives us, see it every year, it gives us a ton of problems. All I can say, guys, if this is something that is a struggle for you, please see me so I can help you with this. All right, rounding, and I put our little place values in there just like we did in the beginning of the lesson. I'm going to start with this first thing here. Round this number to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so here's what I look at. When I write down this number, 1,433.004, okay, and it says hundredth. Well, the hundredths is this place right here, okay, it's that one, so it's that second 0. So that tells me that's the last decimal spot I want to keep. So I want to keep all of this, everything before it, all the way up into that hundredth place. I'm going to keep this number. The only thing I have to decide now is this 0 right here, is it going to stay a 0 or is it going to go up and become a 1? That's the only choice. That's all rounding is. And that's going to be determined by that next number that's outside of the box. Since that number's a 4, remember if it's a 5 or bigger, that's when we go up. So that 0 would have become a 1. Because it's a 4 or less, that tells me that we round down, which really means that that 0 is going to stay the same. So in this case, our number stays 1,433.00 for our final answer. And yes, I do want to keep those .00s. I know some people say let's drop those off now because they're decimal places. But because the question specifically asked for the 100th place, you have to keep the 100th place. All right, it's a measure of accuracy. Last thing, round this number to the nearest 100. Okay, I'm going to write this number out again here. 1,433.00. Round to the nearest 100. Well, here's our hundreds, because it didn't end in THS. That means it's one of the whole number place values. Round to the nearest hundreds. So this is the number here that I'm going to round. Okay, I'm deciding, does that 4 stay the same or does it go up and become a 5? And just like before, what determines is the number that's right outside the box. Since that's a 3, that means that 4 is going to stay the same. Now here's the key. When I round this, 1,400, I cannot do this. I'm going to get rid of that for a second. What I can't do, like the decimals we can just drop off, but I can't just drop everything off. Because that would be saying 1,433 is really close to the number 14. Well, that's not the case at all. If you think so, I'll trade you $14 for $1,433. They're not the same. Okay? We're taking 1,433, rounding it so that 14 stays the same. But now these places here, all the way up to the decimal point, we have to keep. They become zeros all the way up to the decimal point. The only thing that we can get rid of are the actual decimal places. So that number would become 1,400. And if you really think about it, 1,433, is that pretty close to 1,400? Yeah. 1,433, 1,400 is the nearest 100. That's our lesson today, guys. Call me over if you have questions.